Right, welcome everyone to this festive edition of the General Counselling podcast. We're going to pick the bones out of 2023, a year that's probably not been anyone's favourite, with the possible exception of the recruiters with the Paul Weiss gig. We're going to be hosting Montresor's resident experts covering partners, associates, the in-house world and business support markets about the year that was 2023 and what we can expect over the course of next year. So first up, I'd like to welcome our own star lateral of 2023 and head of our partner team, Freddie Lawson.
Hi guys.
Welcome, Freddie.
Thank you for having me.
It's a busy year in partners for us. What were your highlights for 2023?
My highlight is joining Montresor. Really enjoyed it. I'm paid to say that though.
Passed your probation?
Passed my probation just about. And no, I think that there are lots of challenges in the market still, and transactional work is probably down a little bit, but there's loads to get on with in the partner market, and anyone with a solid business is still highly sought after. But we've got a lot of pipeline for 24 and are looking pretty good. So
yeah, I think as we go into the end of 23, we've had meetings at Slaughter May, Clifford Chance, Skadden. All the fee revenues at these firms are actually up 23 on 22. They've been being made in certainly different practice areas. So we're seeing a lot of litigation and investigations. But the underlying model that the law firms are working seems to be incredibly robust. I guess the two major interesting things I saw this year in the partner world, the first one was the Paul Weiss Kirkland.
Definitely, and Paul Weiss setting up, and have been rumoured for years. They've been looking, and it's all about timing, really. I think that story has been very, very interesting. Certainly, James Booth, the Financial News, has been read by lots of people, finding out what's happening behind the scenes. But that disruption of Paul Weiss with some seriously good players led by Neil Sachdev and Roger Johnson. Has been a great thing for disrupting the market for us and ensuring that Kirkland's had to rise again. I think that the response from Kirkland has been very, very impressive, and they were never going to go away, but hiring Ian Barrett and Sinead O'Shea has been very impressive, as well as investing in tax more recently. I think that the Paul Weiss story is really ambitious and a massive should give massive confidence to London as a key legal market, and also it's a disruptor for other firms, so they've got to react. And I think that most firms that we've spoken to, like the ones you spoke of in the Magic Circle or in the large US firms, they've been saying to us, well, actually, this year we've done quite well. That there's been solid performance in things like antitrust and disputes, and that's become more of the backbone of the firm. And corporate has still been steady, but there just hasn't been as much attrition as there once was, and that as a result, that's kind of hit their profitability. So there's lots of stuff to react to there. There's a new disruptor. There's a shifting of how law firms behave. But it seems pretty solid and resilient.
I think, given the wider background of the leverage loan market being super quiet, and a firm like Paul Weiss, by our calculation, they're north of 100 million quid a year in the salaries that they're offering partners and associates at the moment, which they've done in a market that's down. That is an unbelievable way of backing London over the long term, because you've got to assume they're not making that back in the next few years. They've got to be looking at that as a decade-long play.
Yeah, but the two laws that are dominant in the world are New York law and English law, and you look at the client base of the people that they brought over. It's European private equity and global private equity, absolutely key to it, and they're proven excellent players. So I think that Paul Weiss is certainly given a sign of confidence in the ability of the people they brought over to make it back and then some, and they're not going to stop there, which is for people like us pretty cool, because it's going to disrupt other areas of the market and provide opportunity for people who might look at their platform and go, well, actually, is this the right place for me? So
the other big story of the year on the partner wide was the A&O Sherman merger, which caught everyone by a bit of a surprise over the summer. What have you heard about the take from the A&O partners on that?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing story. I think that it points towards, for me, really strong leadership and the importance of really strong leadership that's trusted by the partners and the partnership to get the vote through with such a backing, particularly of the A&O partners. They must look back on their failed merger with O'Melveny and go, God, we were pretty lucky to get out of that one.
And there was a lot of chat that it wasn't going to go through. And then it just absolutely sailed through almost unopposed.
Not only that, I think the genesis of it, of Vim spotting the opportunity, going to New York, putting an idea on the table, and as I've heard, getting there, meeting the Sherman management, and a lunch turning into a dinner, turning into staying there for 3 weeks, and then coming back to your partnership and going, by the way, I've got this deal on the table. It will give us a foothold in New York, a brand, and opportunity in Texas, as well as an accretive global imprint. I think that's massively impressive, and should say to other law firms that not enough law firm leaders are bold. There's so many law firm leaders that are just kind of see it as that kind of Patek Philippe style management of, I just look after it for the next generation, take no risk. And this is really bold, and I think that the rest of the Magic Circle look at what they've done and go, crikey, actually we're a bit behind now.
Yeah, they just need to make sure that they hold on to New York M&A.
Exactly.
And how do you think the rest of the wider Magic Circle will respond next year?
I think that they're all focusing on America.
Yeah.
That America is incredibly resilient. It might have a broken political system, but its economy just keeps on going up and up. And that's probably the opposite to us, that we have a strong political system, but our economy is sclerotic. So I think that all management are focused on America, because those firms who have America inbound work into London and Europe are pretty solid at the moment.
So what? Any other predictions, hot takes that you see happening next year?
My big prediction is that I think disputes will go nuts next year. I think that the American firms in London, there are relatively few that have properly invested in disputes, particularly in the to balance up what they do in the States. In the States, it's always over a third to, if not 40%, of fee income in America. America's more litigious market, but in any event, to have 15% or so of London revenue to come from disputes, that's not enough. So I predict that disputes is going to get pretty crazy next
Especially
year.
the great things like class actions, which we know.
Absolutely, and that's class actions have really kicked off, as well as litigation funding. Although litigation funding has had a bit of a weird year with some of those some of their marquee decisions.
I think my take on the prediction for the partners side is going to be there are going to be some American firms that were reliant on private equity revenue over the course of the last few years, maybe made quite expensive hires, who don't have the marquee relationships with the KKRs and the Bains, who might start to find it quite a challenging year next year. And it's going to be interesting to see how many of those have their commitment to London tested.
We're already seeing that, right? The tide's gone out a bit and some hires that were made in that 2019 to 2021 period are looking slightly fragile at the moment. So that will equally provide opportunity, because there's been a lot of drag on profitability.
It's opportunity, but it's also threats. If you're a firm, if you look at the infrastructure market, and there were all these firms that were relying on the sort of mid-tier private equity outfits investing in infrastructure, that's all moving to KKR and the big players. And the big players don't spread the love around that much outside the big elites.
No.
So how the mid-tier US firms and the Silver Circle, and to a certain degree the Magic Circle, respond to that is going to be really interesting next year.
Totally. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Freddie. Next up, welcome the two leaders of our associate business, Hamish Drake and Hannah Benja. Welcome, guys. So different year 22 to 23 for the associate market.
Definitely enormously different, I think, is the way to answer that question. We've gone from such a bull market to an incredibly different market to one I've ever worked in. Leverage finance, obviously already alluded to. Private equity, so much quieter than I think I've ever seen. The great thing about this market is, I guess, the ability to do a lot of work on disputes roles. I know you already mentioned how busy it is this year. And I think, as you said, Freddie, next year is going to be no exception to that. There's been so much in the energy transition area, kind of across projects, project development, project finance work, also infra finance too. I think that's going to continue to get busy. The fact that we have COP happening very soon, and the importance of finding alternative sources of energy as well. I think also for relocators, it's been a very difficult market. I think that if you're from other jurisdictions and you think, oh, I'd love to come to London for a few years and spend a few years as an associate here, it's become really difficult.
The rite of passage for Kiwis and Aussies has been shut off a bit this year. Has certainly been our bread and butter to some extent for the last 4 years, especially during the boom as well. I think if you had sort of 3 to 4 years experience in New Zealand or Australia or South Africa, it was very easy to come across. Now we have scores of associates from elite firms in New Zealand, Australia, South Africa who are struggling to get roles, some of them working in bars, some of them working in document review.
It's really challenging.
That's the bellwether for the market, isn't it? When if you're getting relocation lawyers from Ireland and Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, if those guys are walking into jobs, it's a busy market. Would you say we're in a bad market now, or does it just suffer by comparison to how busy it was last year?
I think it's probably suffered by comparison. I think there's still ample opportunity for UK trained retained elite associates. So if you've done 3 years post qualification A&O links Freshfields, you still walk into a firm because there's less questions around your experience and around your career history and that sort of thing. If you're coming over from an overseas jurisdiction, you're less of a well-known quantity. You're not plug and play, and there's risk involved, and firms are actively trying to avoid risk at the moment.
And how are the guys who came over in the last few years faring? If you came over for a year, you want to move. How easy is it for you to do that at the moment?
Pretty challenging.
Yeah,
there's been such a focus on UK, often trained and retained associates in particular areas. That whereas last year and the year before, partners were very happy to hire Australians, New Zealand qualified South Africans, but now it's increasingly hard.
And I think a lot of them are being found out as well. If you're not excellent and you have been at a firm less than 2 years, you've come under quite a lot of pressure in the last 12 months or so to earn your place, because it's great to bring people who aren't UK training qualified in when things are busy, but when things quieten down, they're often the first to go.
Is there a more robust interview process as a result of that shift in the market?
I've seen that in terms of some processes, yes. So an NQ having 5 or 6 rounds.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing is we're seeing excitement to get someone for interview, and then they go through 1 or 2 rounds, and then you're sort of waiting for an offer, and there's
another round,
and
then another one after that,
and then sometimes a no from that. Whereas in the bull market of 21-22, we got offers after 1 interview, which is we tried to discourage anyway, but it was
there were a lot of firms pitching NQs who wouldn't get interviews there anymore when they were doing first round meetings with them in 21.
And sign-on bonuses in 21-22 were absolutely insane. Every candidate I placed at a particular UK firm which sits below the Silver Circle, I think I placed 15 associates there over 12 months. Almost every single one of them got a sign-on bonus because they were perceived to be walking away from something, and it was a competitive market. We have still managed to secure associate sign-on bonuses this year, but it's less of a golden handshake and more of a make someone whole for what they're missing out on.
And there was a lot of chat at the beginning of the year about redundancy programs, both overt and stealth. What have you seen in the big major law firms in relation to job cutting?
I think most notably CMS, DECA and others have announced big redundancies, but I know firms that have made more redundancies than that haven't been announced, and they've been stealth layoffs. A lot of these firms are telling people that they should probably find something else and leaving them on the website for enough time to enable them to legitimately find another role whilst being perceived to still be employed.
The challenge for those guys, especially if you need sponsorship though, is in a market which isn't hugely busy and you need sponsorship and people are a bit suspicious about why you might be leaving those firms, it becomes pretty hard.
It's been, I think it's difficult as well for associates that are so used to it being so easy to get, well, comparatively not difficult to get a job at a plum firm in, I don't know, leverage finance or something, thinking they've got all these options open to them, having calls from recruiters all the time, and all of a sudden when they're ready to move, realising that actually there aren't that many options out there, and particularly if they already are qualified in a different jurisdiction and have only been at that firm for a year and a half.
It's been very humbling for some associates and UK associates as well, you know. UK trained retained associates in areas like CLOs or securitization or derivatives, typically very candidate short areas where candidates walk into a role. You know, those roles aren't there at the moment, and you know, people are sort of having to stay put and be careful.
How does the market compare now to where it was, say, in spring? When was the sort of pinch point? Are we in it now? Was it a bit earlier this year?
I'm saying hopefully we're in a better place now than we were in the spring, and I think certainly in terms of jobs, in terms of activity levels, it definitely seems better. And what is interesting is that quite a few of those roles are in the sort of bread and butter areas that have suffered so much earlier this year and last year. Private equity, leverage finance, funds, areas like that.
I think it's still incredibly difficult, but it's kind of the new normal, and we've adjusted to that.
Yeah.
We've adjusted our expectations, we've adjusted our work patterns and how we operate as well. It's turned much more headhunting, cold calling, people at the desk, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we are after those absolutely premier candidates who are very much placeable.
You've obviously both been helping me quite a lot on the partner side as well, and getting exclusive roles and be more client-led on those. Are there particular areas that you've been pleased of getting exclusive mandates that you go, well, actually, I could see in 24 these areas at the kind of counsel to first-year partner level being something people are investing in? Is the tickle of those things coming back? Are there areas that you want to speak about?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, I've already alluded to energy as being one of those areas. We've seen so many moves in partner as well as associate levels, and I think that's just going to continue. And certainly a lot of my clients have said that they would be interested in you know, successful individuals in those areas at counsel and partner level.
We've seen a lot of our close partner contacts move laterally as well, and that's kind of brought with it exclusive associate hiring mandates.
Yes.
So a lot of our work this year has been building out new teams at new firms. And so, you know, whilst, you know, leverage finance might not be busy, we have relationships with partners that have moved, and it's been very busy in the partner in that space.
Yeah.
So that's kept us afloat in terms of, you know, focusing on those mandates, whereas, you know, they wouldn't ordinarily be hiring if they'd stayed with the current firm.
So firms are backing their laterals by letting them hire, even if the
backing their laterals through gritted teeth probably a little bit, because the lateral has come on board, they've paid them millions, and they're actually not making any money yet. And they're, you know, they've promised that lateral, you know, a group of associates, and they have to go out and spend, you know, more money on them. Great for us.
But it's also definitely more of a client. I mean, it's always a client-focused market in some ways because our relationships with our clients are so important. But I would certainly say that your relationships with your clients are even more important in this market, as you say, because getting heads up, getting exclusive roles, that is so important in this market.
And it's also been a market where we've had to be very honest with clients and actually really doing our homework on candidates to ensure we're not giving our clients a lemon, really, because they are dependent on us to provide quality associates that are vetted.
It does really matter when you're also going to the high level candidates, and you go, no, I don't call you all the time, I don't bother you all the time, but this one's really important because there's a strong narrative coming.
So what couple of predictions from each of you, one each for 2024?
I think that I'm going to say put my hat on M&A getting busier, and IPOs as well, I'd say, for like the second half of next year.
They're not going to get quieter.
It's a pretty easy one to make, I guess.
Hamish?
I mean, I say this with a sort of hope. I would say that there's going to be more of a focus on ESG across the board. I think there's been some bad press around it lately, but it's not going away. We've been having conversations with a number of firms that are looking to invest in that space.
And some definite laterals in that space that will need teams.
Laterals in that space that will need teams as well. So I think that's an area of interest. I think a lot of people are rebadging themselves within ESG, but I think the genuine sort of people that have been in that space for a while will be in demand.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say is the issue around profitability. We talked earlier about how these firms are making more money, making more fees. Profitability actually is down a bit in the majority of these firms, and the big reason for that is they're not seeing the normal levels of attrition at senior associate level because the jobs market is quieter. That can go on for a certain amount of time, but what I expect to see next year is there are going to be some people in senior associate positions in quieter practices who are probably a little bit more actively moved on than they have been in the last year or so.
And one thing I'd say as sure as the day, as long as that, salaries are going to move, because 1 or 2 firms do it and then everyone does it. We've seen it this week. We saw Millbank come to market first. We've seen Cravath come and beat them.
But do you think everyone's going to match like they used to?
I think on the US side, there's
yeah, but it's happening today, right? But whether the English firms do it or
but
the
it's also
international
like
firms,
I think, but in the past you had like I think not all of them. I think are all of them.
I don't think every single US firm within that wider elite group will do it personally.
And we have UK firms asking us already about salary predictions for next year, what clients are doing, what the competitors are doing. I think there's money to give people a 5 to 10k uplift because they want to keep and.
I think the mega elite, like Simpson, Thatcher, Cravath, Paul Wise, Kirkland, Aiken, those guys. There's not huge amounts of divergence, but is the tier below that, without wanting to name them because they'll all get cross, but are they all going to be automatically matching Cravath? I think there's going to start to see some divergence there.
So.
I don't think they will.
Yeah.
Great, guys. Thanks very much. So next up, I'd like to welcome 2 of our experts from our in-house financial services team. Elmira Meehan and Pradeep Sahota. Welcome to the programme. So guys, FS was probably one of our busiest areas in 22. How does that compare to what's been happening in the last 12 months?
Shall I start? Shall I take this? I would say 2023 was not a great year. Definitely not compared to 2022. A lot of our investment banking clients have had hiring freezes, and actually not just investment banking clients, but across the board for parts of 23 and some for most of 23. I guess that is because of various factors, the economic downturn in general, the rising interest rates, and
how much of the banking crisis was the big thing that took the news and must have been spring, and if I was looking at the job flow in our in-house team, that was when it started to tail off. Is that coincidental, do you think, or was that a big driver of the demand in the market?
I think it's a big driver. I think it creates uncertainty. Everyone pauses at that point. I think that coupled with everything else going on, because it wasn't just one bank, it was Credit Suisse SVP around March time, and then First Republic in, was that May? Yeah. So I think
was it as late as that? Yeah, probably was.
Yeah, because what I noticed on the interim market was up until then, like just pre-summer, things were okay, and then it started quietening down. There were still roles for traditional reasons like maternity covers, paternity covers, sabbaticals, but we weren't seeing what we were seeing in 2022, whereas in 2022 we were seeing roles coming up in the interim side just because it was busy. We were even seeing interim roles within private practice, which was a real telltale sign.
And do you think, I'm assuming that in-house legal teams aren't just sitting around with not much to do?
No, definitely not. I think in-house legal teams are always busy regardless of market conditions. And some areas have certainly done better than others. I would say derivatives remains busy, legal team supporting sales and trading, divisions, are generally pretty busy.
Because the interesting looking from the outside is that the actual bank results have been pretty good.
Yeah,
they're all doing fine.
I think it's... So the interest rates have helped.
Yes. Some businesses have done really well out of it. I think high interest rates have been good for financing deals and hedging and whatnot. So legal teams supporting those areas have done well and have been busy. Other areas that we've seen busy as well have been trade finance, fund finance. We've seen quite a bit of demand in that space.
You see any of the private credit? Everyone in private practice is talking private credit.
I don't think in-house is quite picked up at the same stage yet, but maybe we'll see more of it next year. ESG and ESG regulation have been quite busy. I think there's just so many new things constantly coming up that institutions just need to keep up with it.
And what are they messaging on bonuses in the banks for this year?
Yeah, see, what I feel like with the banks is, like we're saying, the banks are still busy. The permanent staff who are there and whoever's there are still picking things up. So where I just feel like the banks have become a lot more cost conscious.
Yeah. And they were quite cost conscious before.
They were cost conscious before. But what I'm speaking to, like hiring managers who haven't been able to take on more resource on the interim side or even on the permanent side, they are super busy.
Yeah.
So I feel like the conversations I've had, I feel like bonuses are or have been like decent.
I mean, they don't swing as wildly as front office staff either, do they? I mean, if they're busy and the bank's profitable, you know, you're not talking about multiples of salary for most of these guys.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is probably similar to last year or slightly below.
Yeah.
Which is understandable.
What about base salaries? Because they must be looking at the law firms and just thinking, oh, great, they're raising them another 10%, and the American firms we'll just match that.
No.
That's not what's going to happen.
No, they will never match that. I don't think in-house will ever catch up really particularly with US law firms. I think we saw a bit of a hike in basic salaries last year, and I don't think we're going to see another one this year, or we haven't seen one this year. Definitely not, given what's been going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what's activity like on the buy side? Are we seeing any particular areas? I know we've seen a lot of infra stuff happening. We're seeing lots of energy transition, ESG stuff. Are we seeing a noticeable increase in jobs within that bit of the investor world?
I think the roles that we were seeing kind of earlier this year were more to do with increasing amounts of regulation. Funds as an area was also busy, and I'd kind of put it in the same bracket as derivatives as an area that is somewhat resilient and remains busy even in uncertain markets. Probably a bit more kind of on the private credit side in funds as opposed to banks. Again, that might change next year, but we'll have to wait and see.
And have we seen any redundancy programs in any of the banks?
Mm-hmm.
There's restructurings happening across a few banks.
Yeah. Who tends to get caught up in that? What sort of?
As in which banks?
No, what sort of level? What sort of? Who needs to be worried if you're an in-house counsel sat in a bank if there's going to be a redundancy program?
So from what I've heard, some banks are saying it's more senior level at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then I've also spoken to candidates at VP level who have been put on notice.
Okay. Because that's the thing I find difficult for those guys at the more senior level is that the contractor market was picking up loads of them over the course of the last 5 years with comparatively high day rate jobs. Mm-hmm. That was the canary in the coal mine for the permanent thing that we saw this year. Those things started to evaporate in and around the summer. What has to happen for those things to start picking up again?
For the
interim stuff, yeah.
I feel like at the moment it seems to be a budget issue for most, cost approval. So while they're going through restructurings, they're pausing on recruitment across the board. What we thought was going to happen when we've got permanent headcount freezes, that interim would pick up on that side. Yeah. But it seems to not have happened in that way.
And
as
that's
much.
Budget control.
Budget control. Like I spoke to someone at a bank this morning, and they were saying in their team they've got 2 maternity covers, 2 people have left, haven't had approval. To plug that even with interim.
Yeah.
So on both sides. So like I said, I feel like everyone's just putting pause on things and being cautious and seeing what happens.
And if we could get one prediction for 2024 from each of you guys for FS?
I think things can only get better.
Yes, I agree. From what I'm hearing, I'm already aware of various potential things in the pipeline, so it sounds like there's more positivity and more momentum coming up next year.
Yeah, and hopefully more certainty in the markets now. Hopefully rates are.
I think if rates stabilise, I think if once the banking crises are over 12 months in the rearview mirror, hopefully we'll get some positive geopolitical news on Russia, Ukraine, or Israel, Palestine. But with all of those things going on, you can see why it's been a turbulent year, and it's almost becoming normalised now. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate your insight. And happy Christmas. Sorry you didn't get to wear your hat.
Yes. Thanks.
So for the last segment, for our festive wrap-up of 2023, I'd like to welcome two teams, Josh Blake and Billy Partridge-Nordier from our in-house commerce and industry team, and Fran Milton from our business support group. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. Thank you very much thanks for wearing your festive headgear. The Puritans of the financial services perm team.
They weren't having it.
Weren't having it, so it's good to have a feel of.
If we have a better year next year, we'll get them in hats, I'm sure.
Yeah, might make them wear Father Christmas outfits next year. Josh and Billy, looking at the commerce team, we've just had the finance guys in, and clearly that's been in the last 6 months a pretty bruising market. How would you guys describe 23 in commerce and industry?
A mixed bag in C&I would say. I think it's definitely the sectors that I've been working in a lot beforehand. Tech was obviously a lot quieter in 2023, but other areas really busy. FinTech seems to have stayed quite buoyant. Life sciences seems to have been really busy still. So definitely lots of opportunity in the market, just changing up of sectors, I guess.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Billy bet me £100 I couldn't go through this podcast without mentioning inflation or high interest rates. So I've already lost that bet. But it's definitely been, as you said, a tough macroeconomic climate. I think what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of legal teams, senior legal leaders, GCs are being stretched to work with less, do more with less. They don't have as much budget. You've got CEOs, CFOs, COOs, all the C's kind of looking at spreadsheets and saying you need to be careful on costs. So that's led to a bit less hiring and really leaders needing to look at innovative ways of making the changes that they need to implement and managing the teams that they do have. And part of that is working more closely with the business and becoming truly aligned with the business and a real business partner to help facilitate the work that they're doing and not spending as much time on the day-to-day kind of pure legal work, which is proving a bit more difficult at the minute.
How do you feel the current market compares to the 5-6 year average? Do we feel it's quiet on the basis that it was next to one of the busiest markets we've seen, or how does this compare to rolling 10-year average?
I think it is a slight return to the equilibrium. It was, the year before was just crazy, right? The market was really busy. There were so many jobs. Candidates were happy to be looking. Macroeconomic conditions felt pretty positive. So I'm not going to downplay the last year and what's been going on, but definitely it does seem like a slight return to average, I would say.
Because we do still see the number of candidates in C&I who have multiple offers towards the end, which you're not seeing so much in financial services, I don't think. Yeah,
it seems a lot worse because of the juxtaposition with the year before. But actually, as Billy mentioned, the last couple of months we've seen some green shoots, and there are multiple offers. A lot more jobs that are coming onto the market. So generally, look, we've got the hats on, so it can't be too bad at the moment.
And how have the C&I world responded to the salary increases that we're still seeing in the law firm world?
It is, the salary increases obviously come with a sort of second half to them, which is that the fees will also increase that the GCs and in-house teams are paying. So people are starting to get a bit miffed, I guess, with that. They're seeing the end cost really falling with them. So I guess what we're predicting will happen, or is sort of already happening, but will continue, is the rise of things like fractional GCs, ALSPs, training people up through the SQE, because people don't want to pay these crazy salaries anymore, which is essentially what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. They're not trying to match it. In a lot of cases, they can't match it. So actually, really, they've had to flex their resourcing and move away from just trying to hire people straight out of private practice, which can be difficult. And people have to be making a decision that they really want a different way of working. They really want to work closely with the business. They really want work-life balance rather than it being a money thing. It has to be more holistic.
They are sticking to their guns on numbers, I've noticed in some areas. Like, it's not a question of their first offer is just the negotiating point.
Budgets are budgets, right? And I think there is, I would never say as a recruiter there's no room for negotiation.
Yeah.
But it is becoming harder and harder. Businesses are being, that they're asking to see the bottom line. They're asking to see the returns on what the teams are bringing in. And definitely when you start seeing, private practice lawyers who are 3 PQE demanding, 130k basis, there's just no grounds for that. They're not going to be able to meet those expectations.
And feeling 130k is a really annoying pay cut for them to have to take.
And it is an annoying pay cut,
And they're probably getting paid the same as a finance director in some of these businesses.
Yeah, I mean, it's astronomical money. So it's like Josh says, you have to be in it for the right reasons. You want to be a strategic partner to a business. You want to be working on risk management, working with the board, seeing, how the sausage gets made in the company, and really be driven by that and excited by that to work in-house.
Yeah. What would you say, Billy, you I know you wanted to talk about AI.
I would love to talk about AI because I've been talking about it all year. No, I mean, you can't get away with a market update from 2023 without talking about AI. It has been a buzzword, and for good reason, right? Like, I think there is a lot to be said for the tech that's coming out and how easy it's going to make life for a lot of people, especially, sort of the contracts management stuff that we're seeing. But at the end of the day, we are always going to need someone on the other side of that, like a human at the end of the contract, someone who is making that final decision. You can be very, very clever and program it to do all sorts of things, but ultimately people need to be sort of early adopters, get in front of it, understand how the tech works. It's like when GDPR came in, everyone who was interested in data protection started doing it early, and now look, there's
now they've got a new string to their bow, which is
massively
super marketable.
It
does get talked about a lot, and you look at it, and I think sometimes the worries I have is you think, is that going to massively reduce the need for a volume of junior lawyers because they're going to be able to automate a load of that.
Well, Goldman predicted that 40% of legal jobs could disappear in the next however many years. But when you actually speak to lawyers, as Billy said, becoming a business partner, playing more of a role within negotiation or other aspects of the role that aren't strictly doing contract reviews, NDAs, that kind of thing, that work is going to get eaten up in a large part, but jobs will be created by tech, and people need to understand AI regulations as and when they come in, and be experts in the products they're selling, know the risks, know the potential issues. So it creates opportunity as well as diminishing it. Like how much it turns out to be, it remains to be seen.
And I think that's a very good segue to bring Fran in. So Fran was someone that we hired just over a year ago, actually, but probably the biggest growth area for Montresor in 2023 has been in our business services dot review function, which has been something that they said is going to be AI'd out of existence for the last 5 or 6 or maybe even more years. But you guys have had an unbelievably busy year. What's been driving that?
It's been brilliant. I think generally infrastructure teams have remained fairly stable, especially in law firms. We are continuing to work on roles across the board: legal, secretarial, compliance, HR, accounts. They're all paralegal. They're all really busy. There has been some busier areas such as BD and marketing, events, those type of roles, and I think that is showing that law firms still, even in a tighter market, are wanting to be better than their competition, drive themselves forward, and really get their brand out there.
Yeah.
So we've seen quite a lot of roles in that area, and also a heightened focus on diversity and inclusion roles coming in. We've worked on DEI manager roles, workplace culture and engagement advisor roles, these types of positions, because I think firms are seeing, especially this year, they're driving and pushing forward initiatives around creating more inclusive workplace. So yeah, that's been an interesting.
I think that's encouraging, because one of the things that has hit profitability of a lot of the bigger law firms is not that they're making more money their fee rates are going up, their fee volumes are going up year on year, but because they haven't seen the attrition amongst some of their more expensive associate ranks, they're not leaving because the job market's not as busy.
Yeah.
The natural assumption would be that they'd look for other places to cut headcounts to sort of save money, but it doesn't look like that's happened.
No. I think that there's definitely a drive on the type of candidates. It's a candidate-driven market at the moment, and it has been for the whole of this year. And getting good talent is really important to firms. So they've worked really hard at getting the very best people, but yeah, they haven't cut people, especially not good people.
And on the document review side, I think one of the things that's been really interesting this year is the amount of government inquiry work that we've seen coming through.
Yeah. I think litigation has increased, and we do work with a law firm in particular who have had the opportunity to supply review services to quite a few government inquiries.
Yeah.
And I think that's great to be able to offer that to our candidates also, because it's quite a recession-proof area. So that's been really interesting.
I think it's also one you don't want to get wrong. I mean, if you saw what happened to Herbert Smith after they got the post office thing out to, they outsourced it, and they're in the Times getting slated for that. So it is something that you don't want to mess up.
No, absolutely. And I think that, again, driving forward good quality reviewers has been a really key part for law firms this year. And because of AI, funnily enough, the teams of sort of 70, 50 paralegals working for 10 weeks, sort of those days are kind of gone, and now it's a team of 10 for 4 weeks or a team of 5, because AI has come so far that it takes it to this point and then they get in a smaller team. So because of that, they're really hot on quality, and the good review people are in demand, but there are also more of them available because the market isn't what it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Because of AI, it has come down, but it does mean that there are some really good quality people in the market.
It's possibly a good precursor for the more qualified market, is that it will reduce the overall things in, but almost increase the value of the people who are left in it, because you're not going to get rid of all of them.
Absolutely.
So if I look for a prediction from each of you for what's going to be the driving themes of 2024, Belle?
Yeah, I think increase in, it sort of ties in with everything we've said actually, but an increase in sort of need for compliance, regulatory lawyers, risk management people in businesses is going to become huge. We've got things like Digital Markets Act coming through, PSD3 coming probably 2025. There's so much stuff on the horizon that businesses need to proof themselves against and be ready for. So increasing your skill sets in those places is definitely going to be really important.
Yeah, for sure. There are three main things for me. I think the DE&I space is important. What happens with remote working next will be crucial. And then finally, ESG is something that a lot of people have spoken about this year, and we expect to carry on into next year. On the DEI side, as Fran mentioned, a role specifically in that area, but also clients looking a lot more closely at the kind of talent that they're bringing in, and it not just being about, are they a good lawyer, but actually how do we make sure we have a team which has differing opinions, differing backgrounds to bring more to the roles that they have. So I think we'll continue to see that, and it's an area we've taken quite a big interest in with sponsoring things like the Black Council Forum, Ukrainian British Lawyers Network, and recently setting up our own D&I committee. So we want to make sure that we are helping to make meaningful change in that area, which is often difficult to do as a recruiter in the legal market, so it's nice to be able to do that as well. And then on the remote working side, I think we're seeing a bit of a shift back to people working in the office again. A lot of law firms now, not to steal the thunder from the guys before, but the law firms, so some of them moving back to 4-day weeks. We're seeing that companies that do actually offer the flexibility are able to attract broader pools of talent, because there are a lot of people that are used to that.
What's the average for the corporates at the moment, days a week in the office?
I'd say anywhere between sort of 2-3 places that are asking for 4 to 5. It's a struggle.
4 seems to be the sort of, 5 is punchy, isn't it? There's not many.
It's not unheard of.
There's a few.
Here's my resignation.
There's a few of our competitors that do 5 days a week in the office.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
You're not naming and shaming. No, okay.
A Merry
good.
Christmas to all.
And that was right. And the final thing, just on the ESG side, as Billy touched on, lots of regulations and different things happening next year. But a lot of the time in meetings that we're having with clients, it's something they are needing to spend a lot more time on. Maybe they're hiring someone to look specifically at it if it's a big enough organization. But on the whole, I expect we're going to see more of those kind of roles, or at least being part of the diet of work within the general commercial roles.
And Fran, what's your big shout for 24?
I see much of the same. I think that the perm roles will continue. I think there will be more infrastructure roles as firms start to build out a bit more. I think that the paralegal side will remain busy, definitely, and there are more government inquiry positions coming in, so I think that side will also take off quite a bit. So yeah, I think it'll be
My hot take is the government will keep ballsing things up and having inquiries into them, which will
Fingers
keep
crossed
us
for Fran
busy.
if that's the case.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. Well, look, thanks everyone who's hung on all the way to the end of this podcast. I think I'd like to finish off just by saying a massive thank you to all of the candidates and clients that Montresor work with across all of our different business lines, trusting us with your careers, with your hires in what's been a stressful year across all sectors is something that we don't take lightly and extremely, extremely grateful for. We totally understand you guys have a whole load of choice about who you partner with if you're looking to move or if you're looking to hire, and we're very grateful that you choose to partner with us. I think to finish, it is testament to the UK legal profession and the UK economy more broadly that in a year that we've seen war in Europe, war in the Middle East, bank crises, rampant inflation, cost of living pressures, there has still been an enormously diverse range of institutions and businesses hiring brilliant legal professionals across the piece. So for those of you riding out economic headwinds and finding it tough, keep it going. It's always darkest before the dawn. And for those of you who are lucky enough to be operating in a space that's super busy at the moment, lucky you. Wishing everyone in the wider Montresor network a very happy Christmas or whatever you celebrate in the festive season, and look forward to working with you all through 2024. Thanks very much.
Well said, thank you.
Thanks.